An operator shall not board any passenger without any valid negative polymerase chain reaction or a valid COVID-19 negative test certificate. 4. South African authorities reserve the right to verify the authenticity of presented PCR or COVID-19 test certificates. 5. Operators are allowed to provide catering on board an airline, for instance, provided that they take all risk mitigation, health and safety measures to contain the spread of COVID-19, including provision of pre-packed meals. Compliance requirements relating to passengers. Passengers are required to wear face masks at all times and may only remove face masks during emergencies or when instructed by cabin crew to take them off, and must observe social distancing, ensure hand washing, and sanitize regularly. A passenger who is unable to wear a face mask due to an underlying medical condition must submit a medical certificate from a registered medical practitioner to the operator prior to departure. 3. A child under the age of 2 years may be exempted from wearing a face mask. This is because masks can restrict breathing for small children, as their airways are smaller than older children and adults. 4. A passenger must provide to the operator a negative PCR test certificate or a valid COVID-19 negative test certificate obtained not more than 72 hours before the date of travel from an accredited laboratory in line with the World Health Organization requirements. 5. An immunity passport, risk-free certificate of passport immunity in respect of COVID-19 is not acceptable. 6. If a passenger is symptomatic, and the necessary protocols of the Department of Health will be followed. 7. In the event of the passenger's failure, for whatever reason, to submit a certificate as a proof of a negative PCR test certificate or a valid COVID-19 negative test certificate upon arrival in South Africa, the passenger shall be subjected to a compulsory quarantine at a government-designated facility as contemplated for in health directions at his or her own cost. 8. International travel from countries listed as having a high COVID-19 infection and transmission rate is prohibited, except for business travel, which may be allowed with the approval of the cabinet member responsible for home affairs, in which case such passengers must comply with the stipulated requirements. 9. A passenger in transit must be in possession of a negative PCR test certificate or a valid COVID-19 negative test certificate obtained not more than 72 hours before the date of travel from an accredited laboratory. 10. A passenger in transit who displays symptoms of COVID-19 must, upon arrival, under the direction of Port Health, be taken through primary and secondary screening, including COVID-19 testing where applicable. And he should be quarantined at own cost if a positive test result is obtained. In this case, all Department of Health protocols and Department of Transport guidelines must be adhered to. Requirements relating to the crew. Crew members are required to wear face masks at all times except when conducting a safety briefing and during an emergency. Crew members shall, upon arrival in South Africa, be subjected to health protocols as contemplated for in health directions. An operator must ensure the following risk mitigation measures for crew members. 1. Conduct risk assessments to ensure that crew members are fit and proper. 2. Ensure that crew members are protected whilst on duty. International schedule and charter flights. International scheduled and charter flights carrying passengers are allowed through the following airports: Oliver Tambo International Airport, Kinshasa International Airport, and Cape Town International Airport. International outbound flights. With regard to international outbound flights, the following applies. 1. Subject to the travel requirements of a country of destination, a passenger must provide to the operator a negative PCR test certificate or a valid COVID-19 negative test certificate from an accredited laboratory. 2. An operator is responsible to ensure that passengers comply with COVID-19 requirements of the country of destination. If you use any airline, in this instance I will mention South African Airways, SAA will be required when it is flying all over the world that people who bought into SA airline are COVID-19 compliant in relation to the laws of that country of destination. If you fly to Dubai or you fly to wherever that you are permissible to fly to, you will then be required, in terms of the operator, that you are actually compliant with COVID-19 regulations of that particular country. The same as those who come to South Africa are supposed to ensure that passengers who leave from the countries, and some of the passengers which we will explain will probably be coming from high-risk countries, then those airlines are supposed to ensure that those passengers, some of them, majority South Africans, which have been repatriated left and right, are actually compliant when they come to South Africa. A notice to airmen, which is called NOTAM, has been issued that informs pilots who are planning their flights to note and comply with South Africa's legal requirements in line with Alert Level 1. So when you apply for visa, wherever you are departing from, coming to our country, all airlines have been informed. And my colleagues here around can accentuate that. And what is called NOTAM have been issued, informing them that when you come to South Africa, what is required of you. His Excellency President Ramaphosa reminded us that the virus is still with us, and therefore any careless actions from our side will determine if we remain on Alert Level 1 for longer or not. We are exercising extra caution as we open international travel. Extra caution, and that is the word the President used, that we'll open international travel, but we must be cautious in doing so, as most countries who have previously witnessed a drop in the number of infections suffer what health experts call a second wave. We are encouraged by the use of technology that in our airports, Usisi Mpumi is here, who's the chief executive of Airports Company. We are using a technology that in our airports in the form of smart security checkpoint, and we have taken you through that. This technology digitizes the security check process, speed up passenger progress through security, and further enhance security using state-of-the-art scanners. This technology is impressive, reduces human contact, and we have been verily advised that this is one of the ways of reducing the spread of COVID-19. The utilization of this technology ensures that there is no physical pat-downs of passengers who often set off security alarms, because the scanning technology is much better at detecting objects that should not be carried on or around the person. For the sake of our economy and the lives of all South Africans, as well as those citizens who do business with our country, we urge you to cooperate with all civil aviation operators as they make the best out of a very difficult situation. The responsibility is upon each and every one of us using the civil aviation network to ensure that we adhere to the set standards issued by several government departments, such as the Department of Health, the Department of Transport, the Department of Employment and Labour, and their respective agencies. Cross-border road transport. Cross-border road transport from all countries in the continent is permitted, and travellers can only enter through permitted land ports determined by the Minister of Home Affairs. And the other day, he announced those permitted areas. But we can repeat for you as to which are those, if the DG will be in a position to become DG of Home Affairs for a couple of seconds. And they will be subjected to all health protocols determined by the Minister of Health. As of October 2020, all commercial seaports are operational. Signing on crew must produce a negative polymerase chain reaction, PCR, test certificate, or a valid certificate of COVID-19 negative test results, obtained not more than 72 hours before the date of travel from an accredited laboratory in line with World Organization requirements at the first South African port of entry. Cruise ships are prohibited from calling at any of the South African seaports except for the disembarkation of returning South African crew, South African citizens, or holders of South African permanent residence permits. Passenger ships are allowed to call at any South African seaport only for the following purposes: disembarking returning South African citizens and the holders of South African permanent residence permits, replenishing fuel, stores and provisions, medical evacuation, and search and rescue. So we are addressing that because it is a matter that people were asking about cruise ships and all of that. So we are clarifying that. We don't speak about cargo because that has been operational throughout COVID-19. And that goes also for airlines. Air cargo has been operational throughout. So we are clarifying issues that are related to air travel for travelers, but also for maritime as well. At public transport, alert level 1 brings no changes for public transport. However, we are closely monitoring the situation, and the following conditions are applicable. Minibuses, and buses are only permitted to carry a maximum of 70% of their licensed passengers carrying capacity when undertaking long-distance travel. Long distance is defined as any distance in excess of 200 kilometers, irrespective of whether it crosses provincial boundaries or not. Short distance public transport of 200 kilometers or less, minibuses, e-hailing, meter taxis, and so on, chauffeur-driven vehicles and scholar transport vehicle is permitted to carry 100% of their maximum licensed passenger capacity. So, as we continue to confront this pandemic, we should remain vigilant and follow all necessary health protocols. Indeed, we have walked a long way through this pandemic to easily let our guard down. As such, it is important that we must remain vigilant. It has been a long and difficult 6 months since the first declaration of COVID-19 disaster. We have been through the rough seas and have hit some turbulences during this period. Together as a nation, we have held hands and traversed through this disaster. So, ladies and gentlemen of the media, we are here to help with clarify some of the questions that need to be clarified, some of which are operational and technical and have been posed from time to time and all round, so for us to clarify as to what obtains for traveling people to South Africa and outside South Africa. Thank you very much.